We are also, as you saw earlier, President Trump with First Lady Melania at the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia, where they are there for a wreath-laying ceremony, and a moment of silence at 9:37, and then he will deliver remarks as well. So we will dip into that as soon as that starts. They are also reading names at that ceremony at the Pentagon. But right now, I want to bring it here closer to home because we all felt it, didn't we? 24 years ago on 9/11, including Larry Sprinkle, who joins us here in the Live Impact studio. Larry, thank you for being here. We were just saying we usually meet under, of course, happier circumstances and making things all light and jolly. But of course, today, a different day, and we love to see you nonetheless and talk and share and just remember. And you were here on 9/11, right?
No doubt, yeah, on the air doing the morning show, and I mean it was such a vivid memory because. On WCNC, we have what's called cut-ins, where we go from the Today Show back to local. We do the weather and the news. And on that day, it was around, I think I was watching Matt Lauer interviewing a gentleman who wrote a book about Howard Hughes. And they were describing the history of Howard Hughes. And I think it was around 8:52. Matt Lauer goes, we have a report. There's some incident at the World Trade Center. And we have a live picture. They didn't have one. We'll be back after the break. They came after the break, and there's a shot of the two towers, and obviously the fire, the flames, and the smoke. And they went on the air. And from that point on, we were off local for about 27, 28 hours as we found out what happened as the planes hit one after another the World Trade Center. And it's a moment when you're mesmerized by what's going on visually, and then your heart is broken.
Yeah.
Because I remember just thinking to myself, we've been attacked.
What is going? Yes.
What's happening here?
Yeah, because at first we were all thinking, "Oh my gosh, there's been a plane crash at the towers."
You know?
Right. How terrible.
It had happened in the 1940s.
Awful.
A plane had crashed and hit one of the buildings. I can't remember which one it hit. So people just thought it was an accident. Then they realized, no, it's not.
Right.
If you watch the actual broadcast, which you can actually see today of the Today Show, and you're watching as they have a reporter out on the scene describing the tower hit, and there's a wide shot, and if you look closely in the air to the right-hand side, you can see this dot coming out of the sky, getting larger and larger. Then they cut away to a close-up of that tower, and then there was a scream from the reporter, "Oh my gosh, the other tower's been hit." Then they cut to a shot of the two shot again. You see smoke pouring out of the second tower hit on that one.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
it brings me chills and goosebumps all over again, because I was living in LA at the time,
Right.
On the radio as a young journalist and working, delivering news reports to many of our affiliates. Westwood One, I don't even know if that.
Oh yeah, I remember Westwood One. Yes,
So
definitely.
I delivered news reports, and we, a rip and read kind of thing. But I worked the afternoon drive, so. It was 7 o'clock in the morning. I had missed all of what happened live because we're 3 hours behind on the West Coast. Got a phone call, turn on your TV, thought it was an incident at the Twin Towers, but it looks like it has, we're under attack, just like you said. And then we had pagers. We were just remembering in the newsroom, and it was, Come to work. Need you now.
All hands on deck.
All hands on deck, and that's what it was. And it was, nose to the grindstone and trying to update our affiliates because not everyone went to the network.
Yes.
And I remember driving, and I had quite a commute, and just driving in and seeing the American flags on those overpasses, and your heart just breaks.
When you look back on that day, and just the earth stood still. The world stopped, mesmerized by what was going on in New York City. And then when you saw how enormous the situation was and the tragedy, then you heard about the Pentagon, then the plane crashing in Pennsylvania. It was a nightmare. And it was like every single person in this country came together. Unlike the world today.
Right.
But we were Americans, regardless of affiliation. And it just showed the power of what the United States can do. Then also the tragedy that happened that day. That 9/11 was such a tragedy to so many people and so many families affected, and the heartbreak from seeing what happened to, for example, the firefighters. All the first responders who, regardless of what was going on, up the stairs they went.
And not knowing, to the extent of
Yes,
some of those
exactly.
injured first responders not knowing for years
Right.
what was happening and why they were getting sick until many years later, and that became a whole thing. And yeah, speaking of firefighters, my husband's a firefighter, a retired
Right.
firefighter, and 9/11 was a pivotal moment for him
Yes.
because he was not always a firefighter. He was a teacher. This is pre Jane. And he was a teacher in Dallas, Texas. And so that moment, as Larry said, we all became Americans, more patriotic than you ever would know or know today. And for him, it was a pull to fulfill a lifelong dream, a childhood dream.
Wow.
And that's when he
I didn't realize
became a
that's when he became
firefighter.
a firefighter. Wow.
Yeah,
there
in
were so
his
many
adulthood.
people like your husband who became so patriotic and so dedicated. I met a gentleman in Kannapolis at an event there about a month ago who was in the Marine Corps. He, at the time this happened, he was 18. He was in college. He said the minute he saw that, he dropped out of college, joined the Marines, and fought in the Middle East and was critically injured. Came back as a wounded veteran, but he was honored in Kannapolis a few months ago with some other veterans. But he said that day, he said, you know what, college can wait. I'm going to serve my country, just like your husband.
It's a moment.
Yeah.
It's a pivotal moment in many people's lives. And when we say never forget, it's not only for younger folks. Carlene, you were alive.
I was in elementary school
Okay.
at the time.
Yeah.
And what was your feeling as a child?
I remember sitting in the classroom, and I remember a teacher running in to turn on the TV in the classroom. It was already scheduled to be a half day that day. I don't know why I remember that, but I do.
Yeah.
My mom was a teacher at the time as
Oh.
well, so we just went home. And my grandma, like my mom's side of the family is from New York. So my grandma lived in Queens. My Uncle Marty worked in the Empire State Building. I remember being so scared, and I think I was young, I was confused too.
Yeah.
I remember going home, my mom putting it on the TV, and you don't grasp at a young age how
What is this?
what is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, I mean,
until a couple years
frightening.
It was frightening. Frightening was the word.
Yeah.
I've never seen my mom trying to call my Auntie Lane so much, trying to see if Uncle Marty's okay. He's in the Empire State
And
Building
obviously
at
the
the
phones
time.
were out. You couldn't get
The
through.
phones were
Yeah.
jammed. So it was just terrifying.
Right.
Right. So you began to understand, though, days
Kind of.
later.
I feel like it took even a little
Took a
bit
while.
longer to understand just the scope,
Of what
just the
happened.
magnitude of what happened
Yeah.
at a young age. You know what I mean?
Yeah. To be confused and then to add that to a young child's brain
Right.
and heart.
And know
And
you
then
have
seeing how
family
the
and
adults
seeing their
react to it,
family.
how concerned
Exactly.
they
That-
were,
yeah.
how upset they were, yeah.
The people
'Cause
you
I don't
look up
think
to
I don't think
scared.
at that point I had seen adults just, everywhere just scared.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. The people that you look up to
Right.
to be grounded
fear.
are scared.
Right.
I mean, there was a fear
confused.
factor. That's why the next day, planes stopped everywhere because there was
Right.
concern about it happening. In fact, here in Charlotte, they were concerned about the Bank of America corporate headquarters, 60-story building. Is that next? You're a banking center? Are
Right.
they going to be headed here? So everything stopped, and the world just was so still the next several days. I mean, nothing was going on. One of the most dramatic things I witnessed here, a couple things here at the station, but one of our meteorologists, our weekend meteorologist, was a guy named Bob Van Dillen, who's known to a lot of people because he was on CNN Headline News. He now works for the Fox network doing as a meteorologist there. Bob, there were 7 buildings altogether on the World Trade Center site. All were affected. And he came into the station and he said, Larry, and he gave me, he showed, look at this email. And it said, Bob, I don't know what's going on. There's flaming paper coming by my window. I'm going to get out of here. That was his brother. 20 hours later, he found out his brother was okay.
Oh.
20 hours. They got out of the building. they started running away from that part, from Lower Manhattan. They got to the river and got on a ferry that took them out of New York into New Jersey, and then let him off somewhere in New Jersey.
Right.
Had no transportation, no cell phone, so he was out of touch for all that time. So Bob was just so distraught because the flames go past a window. He thought, "That's it, my brother's gone."
Oh my goodness.
But in many cases, family members didn't
Right.
survive.
Right. 2,977
Yeah.
lives lost that day between the Twin Towers, the ground in Pennsylvania.
It's a Pentagon,
And then the
Yeah,
Pentagon.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, we are monitoring President's comments. He is going to deliver remarks during a wreath-laying ceremony. It looks like 9:37 is that second moment of silence. There was a moment of silence at Ground Zero in New York City at 9:03 when the first plane hit the first tower. So we are going to go to that, and they are reading names, continuing to read names at both Ground Zero, New York City, and the Pentagon out of Arlington, Virginia. And so in the weeks and months, Larry, following 9/11, what was it like here? Obviously, we have so many New Yorkers and people from Jersey with Carolina connections, family,
Right.
friends, covering those personal stories and seeing it, not that we're Ground Zero, but I mean, it's a direct line.
No doubt.
Right,
Yeah.
up
I
to
mean,
the
two
East
major
Coast.
cities were a banking center.
Right.
Not as big then as we are now, but obviously a banking center, corporate headquarters for several banks, and so there was a lot of concern. And I mean, it touched every American. And then those people that you come in contact with somebody who has a relative
Right.
who was there. I have a good friend of mine's wife taught students. They lived in New Jersey, a small town called Basking Ridge in New Jersey, and 18 of her students' parents died
Oh,
in what happened. And this one small town, so it affected everybody. It didn't matter where you were in the United States. At some point,
Yes,
some way,
absolutely.
there was a connection to it. If not, you were an American, and these were people that died. You know what a lot of people forget about. That was 2001.
Right.
In 1993, the World Trade Center was hit by a bomb, a
right.
truck bomb.
Right.
Killed 6 and injured about 1,000 people. And they evacuated both of the towers on that day in 1993. It really was the first time, and those terrorists expected what to happen is that tower would fall, after being hit, would fall on the other in 93. So it really was almost a test run for what happened in 2001.
Right. Amazing.
To look back at 1993 and think that this had happened one other time, and people almost
Don't-
completely forgot.
And that's
Yeah.
why we say never forget.
Yeah.
It's almost for us too.
Yeah.
The adults who were at that place and time, knowing where we were.
It's hard to believe
Knowing what
24
we
years
did.
ago. I mean, there's a group out there that weren't even alive then.
Yeah.
Some of the
exactly.
people we work with in this news department
That's right.
were either very, very young or weren't born yet, 24 years ago. So
Incredible.
a lot has happened since then, and that's why this is a Patriot Day, a day of remembrance that we should never forget. It's something that has affected our country, and it will always be affected. What happened at that point, what happened afterwards with the other terrorist situations around the world, and then we're still dealing with just a big volume of the potential that could happen again here. I mean, I think this kind of reminds us it could happen anytime, anywhere.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, and so many things changed.
Right.
Instant.
3.5 ounce travel
Yes.
at the airport.
Yeah.
Those liquids you cannot bring.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a time when everybody could go to
You
the
could
right up
run
to the gate.
gate.
You could go right up to the gate.
Yeah.
Oh, I
if you're
remember
not
so many
flying.
times I was always late, and I'm literally, it's like out of a movie, running up to the gate and literally jumping in the plane, and then closing the door. That happened to me a couple times. You could do
Sure,
that back in
right,
those days.
back in the day.
Never again.
yeah.
The rules are a little more lenient, but after what happened in 9/11, that will never happen again.
Yeah, the
You-
world has changed.
I remember the first time not the first time I went to New York City, but the first time I was there to see the World Trade Center, and just standing there, the base was 1 acre. and you go up in height. It's 110 stories each building.
Right.
And you look and it was almost unimaginable that something could be that big. And then to think that they both came down, that those huge, gigantic buildings, bigger than anything in the world, were so affected that the steel reinforcement basically just dissolved into powder. And
yeah.
they collapsed in front of our eyes right
In front of our eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, unspeakable what happened. It's just unimaginable. I can't even. I remember just the beautiful part of it
Yeah.
were those American flags being and fire trucks over overpasses and all over. And you saw images from around the world doing the same, just waving the American flag.
Even on television, I remember like seeing that, like you saw Friends and like all these New York-based shows. They all had, you know, FDNY shirts and
FDNY,
shirts. Like
that's
it was
right.
everywhere. You know what I mean? It changed pop culture. I mean, it changed everything.
It did.
It had been since World War II, really, that we'd had that kind of united effort among all Americans, because the other involvements, there was a divided nation, especially Vietnam had divided us, and other conflicts. So it brought us all together like none of us had ever seen.
Right.
You know, most people, unless it was the greatest generation, those who were alive during World War II saw that kind of united effort. But to see someone like your husband become a firefighter because of that, and those people that joined the military because they wanted to stand up and defend the country. I mean, the country was under attack at that time, and we didn't know what was going to happen after that. I mean, I think we all imagined, well, what's next? Are there going to be missiles coming in?
Yeah.
And
Right.
what town is going to be hit?
Expect the unexpected. And I remember, oh goodness. So, okay, I was on the radio delivering news reports, and then local media, it was at a time where local stations sent reporters to other countries, and we found out a little bit more about these terrorist cells and these terrorist organizations. And for the news radio station, I went out to the Philippines and did some inquiring, only because I have connections with military and former military there, and was able to file reports for the local, for KFWB there on the West Coast, on a sleeper cell. I mean, not so much a sleeper cell, but you know, a terrorist cell out there, and then the ripple effect of who, why, and we really looked into what is happening, where is the root of these conflicts happening? How far does it go back? And it goes way back, and it goes all over the world. So, just an endless source of, you know, what was happening there. So I'm sorry, I'm sort of distracted because I am monitoring what is happening here. This is obviously President Trump and First Lady Melania. This is at the Pentagon as we await a second.
They're singing "They're Happening" right now if we wanted to go to it.
They're